Japan Journal, the internet's #1 English language weekly online cybercast from Japan. Japan Journal with Mal Adams.
Breaking news from Japan Journal, I'm Mal Adams reporting. For over a year, anyone asking questions about the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the possibility of a lab leak as the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic has been branded as a conspiracy theorist, including this reporter. Well, Japan Journal believes the world needs to know if this pandemic was the product of negligence at the Wuhan lab in China, but the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has reportedly done everything it can to block a credible investigation, and the National Institute of Health under Dr. Anthony Fauci is being accused of scrambling to avoid culpability for its role in funding research at the lab at the time of the outbreak. The chickens are coming home to roost, and I hate to say that I told you so, but I told you so. Japan Journal is now compiling a series of reports and interviews that we've covered on this story since the news of COVID-19's outbreak broke in 2019 in Wuhan, China, in which we suggested early on the probability that the virus had been genetically engineered in a virology laboratory in Wuhan and somehow escaped. With the developments that took place this week in Congress, it seems that the cat is finally out of the bag. The horses have left the barn, and the chickens have indeed come home to roost. Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, and Dr. Anthony Fauci sparred once again at a Senate hearing, this time over the funding of the controversial Wuhan Institute of Virology, the Chinese lab that is believed to have played a role in the initial outbreak of COVID-19. Fauci and Paul have come to verbal blows before over both COVID-19 and related restrictions such as lockdowns and mask wearing. Paul zeroed in on gain-of-function research this time around, which works on making pathogens deadlier or more easily transmissible. He alleged that a U.S. virologist had been working with the Chinese Institute on such research and said it was funded by the National Institute of Health. After the sparring session, Rand said that Fauci lied to Congress when he denied that the National Institute of Health was funding research at the controversial Wuhan lab. Here is the exchange with Senator Paul. You judge for yourself to see if you think he's lying or spinning the truth of the matter.
Dr. Fauci, we don't know whether the pandemic started in a lab in Wuhan or evolved naturally, but we should want to know. 3 million people have died from this pandemic, and that should cause us to explore all possibilities. Instead, government authorities, self-interested in continuing gain-of-function research, say there's nothing to see here. Gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans. Juicing up superviruses is not new. Scientists in the U.S. have long known how to mutate animal viruses to infect humans. For years, Dr. Ralph Barrick, a virologist in the U.S., has been collaborating with Dr. Shi Zhengli of the Wuhan Virology Institute, sharing his discoveries about how to create superviruses. This gain-of-function research has been funded by the NIH. The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Barrick and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain of function research in the Wuhan Institute
Do they
of
fund Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
We do not fund
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain of function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain of function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina, not
You don't think
in
inserting
China.
a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function?
That is
You would be
not-
in the minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function.
Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain of function, despite the fact that people tweet that.
So
they
do
write
you still
about it.
support sending money to the Wuhan Virology Institute?
We do not send money now to the Wuhan
Do you
Virology
support
Institute.
sending money? We did under your tutelage. We were sending it through EcoHealth. It was a sub-agency and a sub-grant. Do you support that the money from NIH that was going to the Wuhan Institute?
Let me explain to you why that was done. The SARS-CoV-1 originated in bats in China. It would have been irresponsible of us if we did not investigate the bat viruses and the serology to see who might have been
Or
infected.
perhaps it would be
in China.
irresponsible to send it to the Chinese government that we may not be able to trust with this knowledge and with this incredibly dangerous viruses. Government scientists like yourself who favor gain of function research.
I don't favor gain of
maintain
function research
that
in
the
China.
disease
You are
arose
saying
naturally.
things that are not correct.
Government defenders of gain of function, such as yourself, say that COVID-19 mutations were random and not designed by man. But interestingly, the technique that Dr. Barrick developed forces mutations by serial passage through cell culture that the mutations appear to be natural. In fact, Dr. Barrick named the technique the no-see-em technique because the mutations appear naturally. Nicholas Baker of the New York Magazine said nobody would know if the virus had been fabricated in a laboratory or grown in nature. Government authorities in the U.S., including yourself, unequivocally deny that COVID-19 could have escaped a lab. But even Dr. Shi in Wuhan wasn't so sure. According to Nicholas Baker, Dr. Shi wondered, could this new virus have come from her own laboratory? She checked her records frantically and found no matches. That really took a load off my mind, she said. I had not slept for days. The director of the gain of function research in Wuhan couldn't sleep because she was terrified that it might be in her lab. Dr. Barrick, an advocate of gain of function research, admits the main problem that the Institute of Virology has is the outbreak occurred in close proximity. What are the odds? Barrick responded, could you rule out a laboratory escape? The answer in this case is probably not. Will you, in front of this group, categorically say that the COVID-19 could not have occurred through serial passage in a laboratory?
I do not have any accounting of what the Chinese may have done, and I'm fully in favor of any further investigation of what went on in China. However, I will repeat again, the NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain of function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
You support it in the U.S. We have 11 labs doing it, and you have allowed it here. We have a committee to do it, but the committee has granted every exemption. You're fooling with Mother Nature here. You're allowing super viruses to be created with a 15% mortality. It's very dangerous. I think it was a huge mistake to share this with China, and it's a huge mistake to allow this to continue in the United States. And we should be very careful to investigate where this virus came from.
I fully agree that you should investigate where the virus came from. But again, we have not funded gain of function research on this virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, no matter how many times
you're parsing
you say
words.
it.
There was
didn't happen.
research. There was research done with Dr. Shi and Dr. Barrick. They have collaborated on gain of function research where they enhanced the SARS virus to infect human airway cells, and they did it by merging a new spike protein on it. That is gain of function. That was joint research between the Wuhan Institute and Dr. Barrick. You can't deny it.
Dr. Richard Ebright, a professor of chemistry and chemical biology at Rutgers University and biosafety expert, is contesting NIH Director Anthony Fauci's testimony Before the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Dr. Fauci's claim made during the exchange with Senator Rand Paul that you just saw, that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, is demonstrably false, according to Ebright. At least some of the NIH-funded research conducted at the WIV unequivocally, he says, qualifies as gain-of-function. That is what Ebright told the National Review. A research article written by WIV scientists says, quote, discovery of a rich gene pool of bat SARS-related coronaviruses provides new insights into the origin of SARS coronavirus, for example, qualifies as gain of function and was clearly a product of NIH funding. Ebright insists that the research can be classified as gain of function under a number of different definitions, including those found in 2 pieces of Department of Health and Human Services guidance on the subject. The first details the Obama administration's 2014 decision to halt domestic gain of function research, which it defines as that which may be reasonably anticipated to confer attributes to influenza, MERS, or SARS viruses, such that the virus would have enhanced pathogenicity and or transmissibility in mammals via the respiratory route. The second, drafted in 2017 as Fauci was pushing to renew government funding for gain-of-function research, provides a definition of what are called enhanced potential pandemic pathogen, or PPP, or those pathogens resulting from the enhancement of the transmissibility and or virulence of a pathogen. Ebright claims that the work being conducted at the WIV using NIH funds originally granted to Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance epitomizes gain-of-function research under the definition HHS provided in its guidance, and is the exact kind of research that led the Obama administration to conclude that gain-of-function was too dangerous to conduct domestically. The Wuhan lab used NIH funding to construct novel chimeric SARS-related coronaviruses able to infect human cells and laboratory animals, he said. This is high-risk research that creates new potential pandemic pathogens, that is to say, potential pandemic pathogens that exist only in a lab, not in nature. This research matches, indeed epitomizes, the definition of gain-of-function research of concern for which federal funding was paused in 2014 to 2017 in the Obama administration. Chimeric coronaviruses refers to those that have been altered and enhanced by man, in this case in such a way as to make them more transmissible and dangerous to humans. The paper drafted by WIV scientists clearly states that the underlying research was funded by, among other entities, the National Institutes of Health, and the NIH's own database of grantees lists this research and confirms that over $660,000 US was spent supporting it. Fauci appears to have been at best mistaken while sparring with Senator Paul this past week. At worst, he was playing tenuous word games meant to deceive. Let me give it to you straight. Let me give you the Japan Journal spin on it. He was telling a damn lie and squirming to escape culpability. How's that? So, here's an interview that this program, Japan Journal, aired on this story over a year ago when the COVID pandemic story first broke. It is an assessment by Dr. Abdul Alim Muhammad of the Nation of Islam, who spoke on the coronavirus origin, the health risks, and controversy as to whether it could have been a man-made biological weapon in the lab in Wuhan and somehow was released or escaped. Let's go to the videotape.
So coronaviruses are generally considered to be animal viruses. When you look a little deeper, you find coronaviruses inhabit parasites that are in the bodies of animals. So therefore, in livestock industries, they have a big coronavirus problem because you can get things like feedlot fever among cattle, sheep, but especially pigs and other domestic animals that are not necessarily so clean. So that's a big problem. Coronaviruses infect animals. Sometimes you may get a human infection with coronavirus. That's somewhat rare. Some of the common colds that people have had are due to coronaviruses. Generally speaking, they have not proven to be extremely fatal. However, what we're dealing with now, the novel coronavirus, COVID-20, this is not a natural coronavirus. This is a genetically engineered, weaponized version of coronavirus that has been married to 4 genes from HIV and probably other genes from perhaps other viral pathogens. The short history is Dr. Lieber of Harvard University, the chief biomolecular scientist at Harvard University, dug up some frozen bodies from the tundra in Alaska. This was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, to investigate what killed them during the Spanish flu epidemic. He isolated that virus from 100 years ago and resurrected it, you could say. But found out that because of the frozen conditions over time, the virus had lost its infectivity. You may question, why would somebody dig up a virus that killed over 100 million people and brought an end to World War I? Well, you would have to ask Dr. Lieber that, but he did that. And then when the infectivity was not what he wanted, then he paired it with 4 genes from HIV and perhaps some other things. And now you have a highly contagious coronavirus that is infecting human beings. And not only from animal to human transmission, but now verified cases, human to human transmission through the air. So you could say that this coronavirus 2020 is the descendant of the MERS virus, the Middle Eastern respiratory virus that killed many people in the Middle East, and the SARS virus that I think that goes back to 2003, 2004, that killed many, many people. Now, the SARS virus was the first indication to the Chinese people that someone was out to get them. The SARS virus was genetically engineered to infect Asian people, preferably. And the Chinese realized this. And so since that time, they have actually been on the defensive. Now the question is whether this latest virus is also a bioweapon engineered to destroy people of Asian descent. And it seems to have another feature. It seems to preferentially infect men as opposed to women. Seems to be much more lethal in men than women. And even though it's considered to be a respiratory virus that causes a respiratory illness, the other interesting factor is that it seems to have a predilection for male testicles. And even in those that recover, the question is, will they be sterilized as after this COVID infection, even if they survive? Bill Gates, along with Dr. Lieber and Johns Hopkins University in October of 2019, conducted a simulation, computer simulation of a coronavirus outbreak, and they determined through computer simulations that such an outbreak would lead to the death of 65 million people. Now, the current experience in China with a 2.3% mortality rate shows that globally we could expect at least 165 million deaths from this virus. So what is it all for? I think it's for the purpose of slowing down the growth of China as a dominant economic, political, and economic power in the world. That is, of course, if it really is a bioweapon. If it's not really a bioweapon, it certainly has taken the US-China trade war to another level. Trade war has become biological warfare, and people are being targeted with their lives. Part of the trade war, of course, was the controversy with a company called Huawei, the leaders in 5G technology. The center of 5G technology is China, and the center of 5G technology in China is Wuhan City, or Hubei, in Hubei province. And when they turned on or switched on the most potent 5G network in the world in Wuhan City, that's when the epidemic broke out. So there are scientists who think that there is an electronic component to what would otherwise just be a biological phenomenon. A virus is on the borderline of living things versus non-living things. It is protein wrapped around genetic material, either RNA or DNA. It is susceptible to electronic frequencies. Viruses can be activated by 5G 60 cycle frequency radiation that was turned on in Wuhan City and just coincidentally happened at the same time as a viral outbreak. Could there be a connection? One final point that I think the world should consider. From my point of view as a medical doctor, someone who knows a little bit about public health, I don't think that the Chinese government could be faulted in any way for their response to whatever happened, whether it was a natural phenomenon or whether it turns out to really be a bio attack. But their response to it was heroic and correct. They built 3 1,000-bed hospitals in a little more than a week. That is phenomenal. They provided hospital care for thousands of people who otherwise would have been left out in the cold to die. And so this is something to ponder. Is the United States capable of the same response, public health wise? Is Europe capable of the same response? Is Africa, is India, are the other nations, are Brazil and other nations in South America and throughout the world? Is Japan, Korea, are they capable of the same heroic, monumental public health measures undertaken by the Chinese, who seem, optimistically I'm speaking now, they seem to have contained the spread of the virus in China through these drastic means. But suppose you had the same level of infection in New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago or some other major city in Europe. As we now see in Italy and Spain and Germany, cases breaking out. Well, this is the tip of the iceberg. 80-some cases now in Long Island, New York, in Los Angeles, in Texas, and other places. People under quarantine. We don't know how many people are really infected because the CDC has only given a little more than 400 tests total. So if they're reporting 50 or 60 cases, that sounds like a small number, and it is, but you'd only tested 400 people. So how can you be sure about the total number of infections in the country? You can't be. So all precautions must be in order. Facial masks are not going too far. Frequent hand washing is not going too far. Avoiding contact with public surfaces is not going too far. Avoiding public gatherings is not going too far. We don't actually know the full characteristics of what we're dealing with, but we must take those things into consideration that we are learning, where these outbreaks are taking place throughout the world. A weak Clorox solution, a cap full of Clorox in a gallon of water, can be used as a disinfectant on surfaces. I use essential oils mixed in water, things like geranium and other essential oils, eucalyptus, camphor. These essential oils mixed in water, sprayed in a house, will keep germs at bay. These are old-fashioned, traditional methods. I think the public health service in America is so decrepit and disabled that every American citizen should consider you're on your own, and you have to do what you can do to protect yourself and your family, because I don't think that the government agencies are going to be able. They're not equipped. The hospitals don't have the space to accommodate you. So you're going to have to accommodate. So the question about whether or not this COVID-20 coronavirus is natural or man-made, I think that the fact that it is man-made is beyond question right now. I think the genetic sequences that have been done throughout the world shows that it did not have a natural origin. You can't naturally combine HIV genes with coronavirus genes. That just doesn't happen in nature. However, nature is capable of things that we may not be able to conceive of. So, for example, one of the things that people are becoming aware of are the tremendous number of deaths that take place every year from ordinary influenza. In the United States, for example, every year you will have between 30 and 40,000 deaths from regular influenza, and that's considered to be normal. And it could even range higher than that, 60, 70,000 per year, and some years lower than that. So we have good seasons and bad seasons. This is from influenza. Well, where did the influenza virus come from? I'm using this as an example for all viruses. Where did they come from? Well, if you have, as you do in China, a situation where you have population congestion, you have human beings living in close proximity with animals. You have human beings living in close proximity to pigs and ducks and chickens. And so the history of influenza is that this is a virus that naturally recombined to produce something that can cause human disease. A bird virus infects a duck in a pond in China. That bird virus gets picked up by a pig who drinks from that pond water. And then that virus recombines inside the body of the pig so that it begins to infect the pig. A bird virus, in other words, has now jumped into a pig. And then who lives right next to the pig, or who ends up eating the pig or slaughtering the pig, is a human being. And so now an original bird virus that somehow was able to infect a pig now makes a second leap, species leap, you could say, into a human being. And now a bird virus that became a swine virus is now a human virus, and we call it influenza. And it has been plaguing the world ever since people thought it was a good idea to live in close proximity to a food source like ducks and pigs. So it's possible, it's remotely possible, that this novel coronavirus is a natural virus, like they say. It came from a meat market in China. It came from bats, it came from this, it came from that. Well, that sounds like the green monkey story related to HIV. And then it turns out green monkeys had very little to do with HIV. Human biomolecular engineers had everything to do with the development of HIV as a biological weapon. And I think that the evidence is very strong right now. And I think the proof positive will come in the future. This was a biologically engineered weapon, probably done by Dr. Lieber and his team from Harvard University in conjunction with Johns Hopkins University and with Wuhan University in China and other government agencies in China. They developed this. They will have to explain to the world why they thought this was such a good idea to do.
Well, there you have it. That's going to do it for this special report on the ongoing controversy surrounding the true origin of the COVID-19 virus. We encourage you to follow this important development and do your own research, as factual information is increasingly being politicized. We thank you for watching. Please click the like button, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Malcolm W. Adams on YouTube to be notified of our upcoming reports. This is Mal Adams reporting from Japan on GNN, the Global News Network for Japan Journal. Please be safe and take good care of yourselves. Good day.
Japan Journal, the Internet's #1 English language weekly online cybercast from Japan. Japan Journal with Mal Adams.